Hello, friends, and welcome back to Leadership 2.0 Live. I'm your host, Ken Scott, and our intention here is to continue to evolve the conversation around leadership, share some practical tips or techniques that we can use to start to master the skill of leadership, and ultimately to get to the point where leadership is distributed throughout an organization and make leadership a fundamental skill and not some nebulous thing that a handful of people seem to have innately. In prior conversations, we talked about vision, and in our last conversation, we talked about change and the need for change. So if I establish a vision, some place that I want to get to, that instantaneously creates a gap between where I am and where I want to be. And that also creates a need for change. And we said that change is inherently difficult because the moment we do something else, we step into the unknown, we increase uncertainty. And anytime our brain can no longer predict the future, we become more uncertain about what is going to happen now that I'm doing something different. We create a threat response in the brain. And so it's absolutely an act of leadership to choose to do something different. So now I want to talk a little bit more about change at a personal level, at an individual level. As leaders, we can often get a little externally focused, and we believe we need to change something about the process, something about our operating system. We need to change the way other people are behaving or how they're approaching their job. And we often miss the opportunity to think about what it is that we need to do different in order to realize our vision. And so one of the first things that I recommend is that we turn that lens inward first. Stephen Covey is really a big influence on me in the beginning of my leadership journey. And I'm summarizing or paraphrasing him when I say that he had this saying that the moment we have a thought that the problem is outside of us, we need to stop because that thought is the problem. And he proposed this idea of change from the inside out. So to have a different influence by changing our approach or changing how we're showing up. And so I suggest is once we establish that vision, that representation of what success looks like, and I had thrown out like an example when with something like Acme Widgets is the leading producer of widgets in North America. We enjoy coming to work and interacting with each other. Our culture is so strong that we attract talent to fill our growth needs, as an example of vision. So from a leadership role, and particularly the higher we are in our hierarchy or on the organizational chart, the first question we should ask ourselves is, what type of leadership or what type of leader do I need to be to realize that vision? Or another way we could ask it is, what leader has that already? And so our first step in this journey is a step of self-leadership. And we establish vision. I said that's the most important thing. Without vision, you have no rudder. You have no way to orient yourself. You have no true north. You don't know where you're going. So then self-leadership is the ability to navigate the unknown by altering the way that we're showing up. And no matter what you do, no matter what you make, no matter what service you provide, you're going to have to navigate the unknown, uncertainty, and you're going to run into all kinds of personalities of individuals that you'll have to interact with. The more adaptable you are, the more you can change your approach, the more likely you are to overcome, go around, or remove those obstacles so that you can ultimately arrive at your destination. And so let's talk a little bit more about personal change. What does it take? What do I need to do to be able to change? Well, again, we start back where we started at the beginning of this. You need some kind of internal representation of what success looks like. So when we ask open-ended questions like, what would great leadership look like? What would a great leader do? What does a great leader act like? When we ask these type of open-ended questions, we engage our prefrontal cortex to try to answer that question. Hold on, sorry. The moment we do that, you need to have your phone on Do Not Disturb for future reference. The moment we do that, we engage the prefrontal cortex and it tries to answer that question. But we can only answer that question with the information that we have stored in our minds. We could call that the building blocks of our vision. So we may need to research new information. And as we said back when we were talking about the vision component, this is the age of information. And in the age of information, anyone can be a genius. So one of the first things I might want to do is understand what leadership looks like. What does a strong leader look like? And I can start to build a model, an internal representation of who I want to be. So I have vision. I have this, okay, I want to move towards that, whatever that might be for you. The next thing we need is self-awareness. And so we need some ability to observe our normal way of leading or our normal habitual actions. And for many people, we fall back on our acumen, our knowledge of the process, our knowledge of the business, which is important. We have to have that on some level. And we try to tell people what they should do. And we're doing that based on our own experience, and we're doing it based on what we think we would do if we were in their position. When we're doing that, we're not leading. We're either mentoring or managing people. And so in order for us to change our leadership approach away from that, if we find ourselves overwhelmed with making all the decisions, we find ourselves people managing, and we're saying, I don't want to manage people is a thought we have in our head, then I suggest we have an opportunity to step into leadership. And Covey also says, no amount of managing will compensate for a lack of leadership, right? So you can't manage yourself out of a lack of leadership. So self-leadership requires that vision, as we said, and it also requires self-awareness. I need to observe, what am I doing? How am I thinking about myself and the people who I'm working with or working for me? What are my behaviors? How do I react to people? What are the actions that I habitually demonstrate? And additionally, how do I feel? What are the emotions that are primary for me? And are they in alignment with my vision of what a leader is? So I need self-awareness. The second thing that I need is free will. I need the ability to demonstrate something different. I need the ability to get my behaviors to match my intentions. I need the ability to get my actions equal to my thoughts or to my vision. I need to get past the realm of vision into action. And that requires free will. And I suggest in order for us to demonstrate free will, the first thing we have to do is demonstrate free won't. Because we have these automatic unconscious programs. We have these ways of showing up that we've acquired through repetition. We could call that a habit. And so in order for us to demonstrate free will, we have to use self-awareness to catch ourselves before we act, create a little space between the stimulus and the response. And then we can, from that place of awareness and space, choose to demonstrate free will. So how do you do that? How do you successfully demonstrate free will? How do you successfully leverage your self-awareness and then do something different in the moment? That's the hardest part about change is making a different choice in the same environment, in the same situation, in the same circumstances. Here's a tip. Here's something that I recommend. It's called an implementation intention. It's super powerful. So you get this idea. So let's say, for example, you read the book on leadership, and it says that you need to build trust. One of the first things you got to do in order to establish a position of leadership so that you can have influence on someone is you have to establish trust. So how do you do that? The book recommends you need to be able to relate with someone, which means you're going to have to listen to them first and understand their point of view or their perspective, or find some way to feel like they're relatable to you, or they feel you're relatable to them. And so from the book, it gives you some tips, and it says for you to maintain awareness and presence with them. It asks you to take a helicopter view and to catch the high points of their conversation, both the facts and the feelings. And then it asks you to wait for them to pause or stop, and then to reflect back to them, to paraphrase back to them the facts and the feelings that you picked up in your listening, and then finally to ask for confirmation. So what you could do then is write out an implementation intention around that model. We'll talk more about mastering the model in later conversations, but for now, let's just focus on this. How do I get myself to actually do it? Because often we have an intention, but then we miss the moment. We miss the opportunity. So the next thing you do is just kind of forward forecast. All right, when's the first opportunity I'm going to have this? And you can think, okay, well, we've got our Monday morning staff meeting. It's a great opportunity. And I also kind of feel like I'm the only one talking in those meetings, so it's even a better opportunity for me to have a different influence, to show up differently. So this is how it might look like. Monday at 8:05 a.m., after I have opened up the meeting and set the agenda, and I ask for any issues that people might have, I'm going to keep my attention on the person who's talking. I'm going to look for facts and feelings that they might be presenting. I'm going to wait for the pause. I'm going to reflect back my understanding, and I'm going to ask for confirmation. The power of that is that the brain does really, really good with specifics. So by you setting a specific environment, the meeting, a specific time, 8:05, a specific follow, so I'm following something I just did, and then I'm going to do this, that sets a really clear image inside the mind. Again, we're using the prefrontal cortex. And it's so clear that you could see yourself doing it, real person. That's a mini mental rehearsal right there. And by doing that, you have set yourself, you've primed the brain to act that way in that moment. Now let's look at the flip side of that. You read the book. You think, oh, that makes a lot of sense. You read through the steps of effective listening, it makes a lot of sense. I'm going to listen more effectively. And you just stop right there. The brain doesn't do very well with vague. You're going to have a hard time catching the moment, the opportunity from that point on. And the more time that passes, the more chances are that that model that you had, that internal representation, is going to slowly prune away. You're going to lose that information. And the next thing you know, 2, 3, 4 weeks, a month have passed, and you go, oh yeah, I forgot I was going to ... So in order for us to lead, we are going to have to be adaptable in the way that we lead. And in order for us to be adaptable in the way that we lead, we're going to have to use our amazing superpowers of self-awareness and free will. And I recommend this idea of an implementation intention to help you follow through on your desired way of approaching a situation. I promise you, the more you do that, the better you'll get at it. And then it just becomes a game of, what do I need to put into the hopper? What other skills do I need to develop to make me a more holistic, a more adaptable, a more dynamic leader that can interact with any personality, that can meet any challenge, that can find the path through the unknown toward my vision? I hope this has been helpful for you. I do apologize for my phone going off and me having to step off for a second and shut that off. I will set an implementation intention for me in the future to make sure that my phone is on do not disturb. Uh, hey, if you can't live it, you probably shouldn't be teaching it. All right. I'll see you next time on Leadership 2.0 Live. Ciao.